What's up, guys? Welcome back to Newswave. So we've talked a bit about some rumored hardware coming from Sony, whether it's the PlayStation 5 Slim or the apparent PlayStation 5 Pro. But now, based on a new report, there appears to be another piece of hardware that's being worked on by Sony, and it has the internet going absolutely wild with speculation. We'll go over that here today. Also, we are going to be talking about an update for a recent Nintendo partnership that seems to point towards the future of their online infrastructure and their account system that we're using right now on the Switch. And we'll also be going over Konami, who seems to be making a serious push in game development that's not necessarily for pachinko machines. Guys, if you enjoy these videos, make sure you hit that like button, helps out a ton. And if new here to the Spawn Wave channel, make sure you subscribe down below. And we're gonna start today with Microsoft and Xbox Game Pass, specifically a game that's leaving the service. Now, it's not new for games to leave the service, as it basically happens every single month. As licenses and contracts and things expire, the games have to leave, and then we have more games shuffle in. It's consistently rotating, but it's mostly for third-party games other than Forza, which does have licenses with car manufacturers and all of that. But one was spotted, and it seems kind of strange. We can see this posted up over on Eurogamer, where they say Xbox console exclusive Quantum Break is leaving Xbox Game Pass. And if you look at the list of other games that are leaving on April 16th, when we're kind of figuring Quantum Break will be leaving around, I mean, it's Life is Strange, there's Long Dark, Panzer Corps 2, Rainbow Six Extraction. It's a list of third-party games. Oh yeah, here's Quantum Break. The only thing I think of is Quantum Break has like actor likeness in there, and maybe it has to do with that, with licensing or contracts, things obviously that we're not completely aware of even. So that it's interesting. We'll have to keep an eye on this, and maybe Microsoft gives us a better explanation around while it's leaving, when it actually does leave, which I'm thinking again midway through this month, we'll probably see it cycle out. Also, we have some good news for people who are experiencing Joy-Con drift in parts of the world and regions that weren't 100% clear on if you can send it in to get a free repair. We can see this posted up over on Nintendo Live, them pulling this from the Nintendo support page, saying, until further notice, Nintendo offers to consumers who purchase the respective product in the EEA or the European Economic Area, UK, and Switzerland, the repairs for responsiveness syndrome, that's an interesting way to put that, relating to control sticks will be conducted at no charge by official Nintendo repair centers. This applies even if the syndrome is caused by wear and tear, even if the 24-month manufacturer's warranty provided by Nintendo has expired. So this is great news. Obviously, if you're in any of those regions there, get a hold of them, get your Joy-Con sent in, get it repaired free of charge. As we know, there's the whole thing around Joy-Con drift, and it seems to be pointing towards faulty hardware and manufacturing or just design choices by Nintendo. But either way, if you purchase a Joy-Con and it is drifting, get a hold of Nintendo. It's just been kind of tough because it's kind of been a case-by-case basis depending on where you are in the world. At least here, they're being a bit more clear in some of these areas. Oh, and we've talked about Capcom's success over basically the last decade or so, right? Ever since Monster Hunter World really came out, though, things have just skyrocketed for them, and it looks like there's no stopping them here. As we can see, their stock is at an all-time high. This posted up by Dr. Serkan Toto, saying it's Monday noon in Japan. Capcom's stock hitting 4,865 yen, all-time high for the company. So impressive stuff there for Capcom. And keep in mind, they're preparing their next big Monster Hunter announcement that most likely is going to be Monster Hunter World 2. And look out, because we saw the effect that Monster Hunter World had on their company and their overall outlook, and Monster Hunter World 2 getting announced even after the success of Monster Hunter Rise. The sky's the limit for Capcom now, and it's actually exciting because maybe that means they can start taking chances on, I don't know, things like Mega Man. I'm still holding out hope for Mega Man X9. Come on, Capcom. You got the money. And guys, with some of the quick news out of the way, let's get into the bigger stuff. Let's start right away with this mystery hardware that Sony is apparently working on now and would even look to introduce before the PlayStation 5 Pro whenever they decide to, I guess, release that. But right now, we're expecting to hear about a PlayStation 5 Slim with a detachable disk drive, according to reports, most likely by the end of this year. But this hardware is not that. It's something else. And we can see this posted up by PlayStation Lifestyle. They're citing Tom Henderson, who is the original source for the PlayStation 5 Slim with detachable disk drive and even that PlayStation 5 Pro. Or he said in the live stream, there's another piece of Sony hardware that'll be released before the Pro that I'm more likely to talk about very soon. In fact, he did mention that he's curious to see the reaction from the competitors on this one. And if you were worried, is this an April Fool's joke? Because I believe he was talking about this on a live stream or like during April Fool's or around that time. He says, for those asking, the new Sony hardware I alluded to in yesterday's stream hasn't been reported on yet. And no, it's not an April Fool's joke. Well, you can you can figure where everyone went to right after that in terms of their thought process. We can see Forbes, for example. Can Sony U-turn from PSVR 2 and give us the PSP and Vita 2? Also citing Tom Henderson's report on this. And yeah, now people are wondering, will Sony actually make a push back into the handheld market? Would they become a two-system company again? Well, the PlayStation 5 is a tremendous success for being a system that doesn't go on the go with you like Nintendo with their Switch, and Sony showing that yes, there is still a place for that dedicated gaming box that you get and put in your living room underneath your TV. But having them do a Vita 2, well, hey, the good news, it most likely can't do any worse than the original Vita, because Sony moved on from that pretty quickly. And I will at least say this in favor of them attempting another handheld. The market is actually set up pretty nicely for them now when it comes to a lot of companies showing up, even Valve with the Steam Deck that you wouldn't have necessarily expected after the Steam machine. And the mobile chips, now more than ever, are seeing a huge push and are very, very capable. However, my concern would be, will Sony look around and say, we can support 3 different platforms? Because while the PlayStation VR 2, I understand, still part of the PS5, right? You need a PS5 to use the headset. It's still something they would develop for to push forward with software that would be exclusive to that headset, at least we assume. I guess they could add on a VR mode to any of the big titles they bring out, like Twisted Metal, maybe something with Last of Us Factions, Spider-Man 2, if you want to get any more sick than maybe what happens with PSVR 2 already. But I still think they need to develop specifically for it with some titles. So will they really split themselves between 3 platforms, since they had a hard enough time doing it with the PS4 and the Vita as it was? But as skeptical as I am for Sony coming out with another handheld, I wouldn't mind seeing it personally, because 1, it'd be cool to see what Sony could come up with, and 2, that added competition for Nintendo would only do good for the industry as a whole. But let's step aside from that for a second and think about what else Sony could do here, because while it's kind of being pumped up as, oh, maybe it would be a new handheld, it's also possible it could be something a bit more anticlimactic, as we have seen Sony do things like monitors and headsets and cell phones and a lot of different things. Doesn't necessarily mean they're pushing into handhelds when they could do something like, I don't know, they could do some other new accessory, a microphone or something there, sure. Or they could do what they did back with the PS2 and bring a TV to market that just has a PlayStation 5 built in. That's kind of thinking outside the box, but you get what I'm saying. There is also the possibility and likelihood even of just pure disappointment for people hoping for that next Vita. But this is certainly an interesting development to keep an eye on here, and with what I'm seeing currently with the mobile chip space, who knows, maybe Sony does want to take a shot at it, and they think they can hold up multiple ecosystems with releases or third-party deals. But hopefully we'll find out more here from Tom Henderson, as it seems like he's maybe setting up a report in the not-too-distant future, we'll see. Next up, let's talk about an update around Nintendo's partnership with DNA. Now, this is one that they had announced last year, and it seemed to point towards them working more hand-in-hand on their online infrastructure with their Nintendo account system and overall ecosystem that they are building. But let's take a look here at their new website, which it looks really cool. Better than I was kind of thinking. You feel like a corporate website, one that just more or less is put up in place to describe what they're doing in the first place. Not necessarily phoned in, but maybe a bit more static, a bit more straightforward. There's a lot going on here, a very dynamic website, at least is what I'll say. But we do have a bit of an explanation translated from Japanese to English, saying Nintendo Systems, which is the new title it appears they've come up with here, was born in April 2023, led by a team of engineers from Nintendo and DNA to create a system that facilitates the delivery of Nintendo's entertainment to our customers. Amidst the many technological innovations in the world, while valuing the spirit of originality and flexibility, members with various strengths engage in lively discussions and work faithfully to create systems with the aim of achieving great results that cannot be achieved by one person alone. Technology surrounding the internet is changing at a dizzying pace and increasing in complexity every day. In this context, Nintendo systems will leverage the relationship of trust between Nintendo and DNA that has been nurtured through a partnership of over 7 years to create new innovations for the world, driven by Nintendo's originality and DNA's knowledge of technology. The development of technology surrounding entertainment is expected to continue to grow. We will continue to take on the challenge of bringing smiles to the faces of as many customers as possible through Nintendo's entertainment by incorporating a diverse range of technology. So DNA has worked on things like the mobile app, worked on Nintendo account systems with Nintendo, and so on there. So this just seems like they're, yes, getting closer, investing more into the future of their online and account systems. And that makes a lot of sense considering we assume this Nintendo account that we have now will be all encompassing with Nintendo's own initiatives going forward. And that starts with their next generation device. Most of us figure, hey, I'll be able to sign in with this very same Nintendo account system I'm using now, whether it's on your cell phone or on your Switch, and all or most of your purchases will carry over, maybe progress. Who knows? Nintendo could be working on an entire new Miiverse, right? Just as far as we know. Maybe it doesn't look exactly the same, but has kind of the core concepts of a community-driven effort, and maybe that's where they bring in something like achievements or ways to communicate just outside of games. And unfortunately, the website, the message they're portraying here is still pretty vague, but it just kind of sets up the future for Nintendo with their overall account system and online presence as being significantly better than what we've seen ever in the past with them. It has felt like Nintendo has fallen behind, or has been behind, constantly when it comes to online, which is weird because back in the day on the Super Nintendo and the Nintendo 64, they actually had some online initiatives that felt kind of ahead of the time. You could check your email, I think, at one point on those older platforms, and then they just kind of fell out of it, especially as things like Xbox Live showed up, and then Sony really got moving with the PlayStation 3, and the online stores came into play, and Nintendo, while they have been trailing behind, it seems like they're trying to catch up a bit here. So I'm hoping that with the launch of their next platform, and maybe they delve deeper into the mobile sphere, not necessarily just with all game development, but more or less the overall infrastructure that ties into things like, who knows, maybe they get an augmented reality with their theme parks and the movies that they're probably going to keep coming out with and other entertainment avenues, just tie it all together under this one umbrella. And it's a lot of potential here if Nintendo and DNA can set it up correctly with this partnership for the future. So I guess we'll see. But again, I think a lot of this is going to start with their next platform that hopefully is not too far off in the future. Next up, let's talk about Konami, which it does seem weird, bit of a throwback that we are starting to talk about Konami more and more. And I think it was exciting for a lot of old school gamers. I say that kind of loosely because you go back to like Metal Gear Solid 5 even. It wasn't that long ago. But still, Konami kind of been out of the game when it comes to some of their bigger franchises. Think of a Castlevania, and until most recently, Silent Hill and Metal Gear Solid. But it kind of feels like Konami is making the U-turn here from being all about the gambling machines and the pachinko machines, and maybe, just maybe, developing some good games. Take a look at this, though. This posted up by VGC, where they say Konami has opened a new studio in Osaka, which it calls a major production center. The company says the studio is characterized by a well-developed environment where creators can demonstrate their full potential and is set up in a location with convenient transportation access. They say as the major production center in Western Japan, the facility is fully equipped with motion capture equipments and sound studios necessary for product development. And they say the Osaka studio is designed to help the company continue sustainable growth in the next 50 years. So they'll be able to make, based on current development cycles, like 3 game now. I'd like to think that Konami is realizing that they have a lot of pent-up demand for some of their franchises that have been kind of on the shelf. Especially after that Silent Hill basically direct that they did, right? The live stream. There's a lot of excitement, and Silent Hill, based on their other franchises, isn't necessarily top of their list. If they did something like that with Castlevania or Metal Gear Solid, I think there would be even more excitement around that. And maybe Konami is realizing, hey, if we start recruiting now, in 5 or 10 years, really, we can have a nice flow of in-house developed games, and we don't have to license everything out. For now, I think that's their best strategy, is to find core studios that they can partner and work with, or even full publishers that'll pick the studios, and then they can produce those games to get people hyped up again for a Metal Gear, a Castlevania, or maybe even a new intellectual property, and then they can kind of take the reins in like 10 years as their studios have recruited and built up their overall workflow. So exciting stuff here for Konami, looking towards 50 years in the future. Hopefully that's not them really setting up for the next generation pachinko machines. And hopefully this is more or less them saying, hey, we're ready to develop games again. And in our last bit of news, let's talk about a controller that seemingly leaked out online, and then we got the rest of the story, and yeah, it led to some disappointment. But take a look at this controller here. This posted up over on Imager and then started to make the rounds as a leaked Starfield Xbox Series controller, and it looks pretty good, right? Overall, and the backing looks great. Even inside the battery compartment, nice little message there for all into the Starfield. And this got people pretty excited. It's like, oh, that's fun. We'll have a nice special edition controller. And who knows, maybe there's a console to go along with it, which I think makes a ton of sense for Microsoft to do that for the kind of release that we're seeing with Starfield. It's building up to be this big release for 2023. Unfortunately, though, that controller appears just to be someone who customizes controllers. It is based out of China, and there's a lot of translations going on to try to figure out the overall source. But as spotted here on Reset Era, they said it seems to be from a controller customization specialist, with another user saying that someone is selling this on a Chinese website. The seller says he got it last month, and his profile shows he's a customization enthusiast. So I think it might just be a custom one. It's, again, a good-looking controller, but unfortunately does not appear to be a leaked official one. I still think Microsoft will do something to celebrate the Starfield release, because it makes all the sense in the world for them to do that. Unfortunately, after seeing that Diablo 4 system, maybe expectations might be lowered a bit, but I think this is setting up for them to have, at the very least, a customized controller, but I would love to see Microsoft go all out and give us that next big customized Xbox Series X, since the only other one we've had was for Halo. I think Starfield is setting up to be that kind of release, though. And before we go to the comment of the day, we're going to take a look at the poll that I posted up yesterday, where I ask, do you think Sony should attempt another handheld system? Look at this, 64% say yes, 36% say no. I would, again, selfishly, like to see Sony attempt it. One of the big reasons is, if you pick up a Vita now, it kind of feels like it would fit in fine, and it came out more than a decade ago. That system came out. Seems like it still works now with its overall design, and that just makes me wonder what Sony could do with current technology, because if you look at the Vita specs to what we're seeing now in phones or even the Switch, it's miles ahead of that. So you feel like Sony might try to do more cutting edge technology and could come up with a really cool looking device, but would Sony actually attempt that? Well, it's not looking great, at least based on recent reports, for PlayStation VR 2, and that probably cost Sony a lot of money to produce. So to me, yeah, why not take a shot at the handheld? I mean, after all, it's not my money, and I would just like to see them try it just to find out what they can come up with and put maybe a little bit of pressure on Nintendo. And we'll finish up with the comment of the day, as you're seeing here. This is from Goku, saying, I'm pretty sure there are adapters out there that let you convert an M.2 to Series X and S for like $20 on eBay. Takes some work with partition magic to get it working, though. So I looked into this, and I was going to do an entire video on it, but it unfortunately is not cost effective, because there's a specific M.2 that you need, and then you get a certain like memory card enclosure, which that's not expensive, but the little M2 is pretty expensive. It's like $150, $160 just to line up with the 1 terabyte model. And then it's, well, why wouldn't you buy the official one for maybe $20 more, and then you don't have to go through partitioning and doing these other things. Now, if that 1 terabyte was $50, then you buy the enclosure for 20. Even if it's 100 and then 20, then I'm like, hey, you know, we might have something here. But I scrapped an entire video because it just didn't make any sense to spend that much, then go through all the headache of trying to set it up just right. With all that said though, the one community that I never want to underestimate or write off is legitimately the modding and homebrew community, so you never know, maybe in a couple of years we see some sort of solution that makes the Xbox side of things when it comes to expandable storage customizable and cheap. And ladies and gentlemen, that's gonna do it here for Newswave. If you enjoyed this video, guys, hit that like button. If not, hit the dislike. Leave comments down below about everything we talked about here today. Was this mystery hardware from Sony that they're preparing? What do you think it is? Could we see another handheld, or is it something out of left field that no one's expecting? Then also, what about Nintendo's update for this partnership between them and DNA? Do you think this is working into their online systems, potentially for their next platform? And then Konami really starting to invest in their game studios. Could we see a big time return here in the next couple years for the company? Thanks guys for watching, and I'll see you next time.